"Why don't you cover that scar?" my brother asked. "No one wants to see that." My aunt snorted. "She just loves the attention." I stayed quiet. Then her husband, a retired colonel, noticed my arm and froze. "Operation Iron Storm, ma'am," he said. My aunt's jaw dropped. Can you imagine spending 2 decades of your life dedicating yourself to something bigger than yourself, only to have your own family mock your sacrifices, dismiss your achievements, and then, one day, publicly humiliate you over the very scar that saved lives? That was my reality, until a single moment of profound recognition changed everything, forcing everyone, especially my most vocal critic, to finally see me. Hey everyone, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Rachel Chester, 41 years old, and my entire adult life has been forged in the crucible of the U.S. Air Force. Discipline, deployments, and yeah, a scar that tells a story all its own. For years, I poured myself into a family who never seemed to have the time or the respect for me. Especially my Aunt Linda. She was relentless, mocking my uniform, my choices, and eventually, that very scar. But then, her own husband, a retired colonel, looked at that scar and saw not a flaw, but a testament. And everything shifted. You know, growing up in a working-class military family, respect and appearances were paramount. Not warmth, not always. My dad, a master sergeant, served 22 years. Our house ran on military time, military discipline. It was an unspoken rule. You earned your seat at the table through service, through sacrifice. Then there was my mom's sister, Aunt Linda. Complete opposite. She married into the military, but she never absorbed its values. She was always polished, always loud, always judgmental, convinced she knew exactly what made a proper woman. Meanwhile, my mom quietly supported Dad through every deployment, every reassignment. Aunt Linda? She turned every family gathering into her own personal stage. I remember my high school graduation. She showed up in a white pantsuit, sunglasses perched on her head, just tearing apart everyone else's outfits. So, when I told her, at 22, that I was joining the Air Force, following Dad's footsteps, her eyes rolled, so hard I thought they might just get stuck that way. "You'll regret that haircut and those boots," she said, sipping her mimosa at the celebration brunch. "Men don't like women who try to be men." My dad didn't say a word, but I saw his jaw tighten. That's when I learned Linda's approval wasn't something you earned. It was something she dispensed, and only if you fit her impossibly narrow definition of femininity and success. Still, I showed up. Every birthday, every barbecue, Thanksgiving, Christmas. I showed up. Sometimes in my dress blues, when protocol allowed, sometimes in civilian clothes. I sat there, listening to her talk about her book club, her garden, her endless theories on why modern women were too aggressive. I'd plaster on a smile through her G.I. Jane jokes and her constant suggestions that I'd never find a husband if I kept playing soldier. Her husband, Colonel Raymond Moore, was a different story. He was a retired Army officer, 30 years under his belt. Quiet, reserved, the kind of man who measured people in silence and only spoke when his words truly mattered. At family functions, he'd just sit there with a beer, watching everything, saying almost nothing. I respected him from a distance, you know? Like you respect a mountain you haven't climbed yet. When I went overseas for the first time, I sent gifts back home. Care packages for my younger cousins, birthday cards for my mom, even a box of cigars for Colonel Raymond that I found at a basic exchange in Germany. Aunt Linda never even acknowledged them. My cousins wrote thank you notes, though. The imbalance was clear. I gave respect, I gave loyalty. She gave me criticism, thinly disguised as concern. Basic training at Lackland? It was exactly what I needed. Structure, purpose, clarity. You showed up, you performed, you earned your place. Nobody cared about your hair or your clothes. They cared if you could run 5 miles, field strip a rifle, follow orders, lead when it mattered. I excelled. Not because I was a natural, but because I understood discipline. By the time I finished technical training and got my first assignment as a second lieutenant, I'd found something Linda's world could never offer, a true meritocracy. My first assignment was at Joint Base San Antonio. Logistics, coordinating supply chains for overseas ops. Long hours, incredibly detailed work, and I loved every minute of it. Promoted to first lieutenant in 2 years, right on schedule. My dad came to the ceremony. My mom cried. Aunt Linda? She sent a card that said, "Congratulations on your promotion. Maybe now you can afford some nicer clothes for family events." I still have that card. I'm not sure why. Maybe just as a reminder that some people will never truly see you, no matter what you achieve. Then came my second tour in the Middle East. I was a captain, leading a team of 15. We managed supply routes through hostile territory, coordinated air support, kept soldiers fed, armed, and mobile in conditions that would break most civilians. I came home with a commendation, a deep, bone-weary understanding of what service truly meant, and a scar that would ultimately change everything. The mission itself, Operation Iron Storm, it's still classified. But it involved a rescue operation that went sideways when our convoy took fire. Shrapnel from an IED tore through my left forearm, severed muscle, nicked bone. The field medic saved my arm. The surgeons back home saved my career. But the scar? That stayed. A thick, ropey line of tissue running from my wrist to my elbow. A permanent reminder of the day I pulled 2 injured airmen from a burning vehicle while rounds pinged off the metal all around us. I didn't talk about it. Not because I was ashamed, but because it wasn't a story for casual barbecues. It was sacred ground. The kind of experience you only share with people who've been there. For 2 years after I came home, I wore long sleeves to family functions. Not to hide the scar itself, but to avoid the inevitable questions. I knew Linda wouldn't understand. I knew she'd find a way to make it about appearances, about what people might think. And I was right. Something shifted after that second deployment. Not with me, but with how my family saw me, or rather, how they refused to see me. I'd been promoted to major. A rank earned through sheer competence, leadership, and the kind of grinding, unsung work that keeps the machine running. At 31, I was ahead of the curve. My father knew it. He'd shake my hand at gatherings with a grip that said everything his words didn't. But Aunt Linda? She started treating my entire career like a phase I needed to outgrow. "You've had your adventure," she said at Easter dinner, passing the ham. "Time to settle down, find a nice man. Maybe use that GI Bill for something practical." I wanted to scream. I was using my experience for something practical. Leading airmen, managing multi-million-dollar logistics, mentoring junior officers. Instead, I just smiled and asked her to pass the rolls. At family gatherings, she'd steer conversations away from my career with the precision of a social engineer. Someone would ask about my deployment, and she'd interrupt with a story about her garden or her latest renovation. If I mentioned an upcoming assignment, she'd joke that I just liked the attention of wearing a uniform. Colonel Raymond rarely spoke during these exchanges. He'd just sit there, watching, his expression unreadable. Sometimes I wondered what he thought, whether he saw what I saw, a woman determined to diminish what she couldn't control. My brother, Ethan, mirrored her tone. He was 3 years younger, a sales manager for a pharmaceutical company, never considered military service. "You still doing that soldier thing?" He'd ask at my mom's birthday party, as if my career was some passing hobby. That one stung more, coming from him. We grew up in the same house, under the same flag, with a dad who taught us both about duty and honor. But somewhere, Ethan had absorbed Linda's worldview. That real success meant civilian comfort, corporate climbing, keeping your hands clean. I tried to brush it off. The Air Force teaches you that not everyone understands service. Some people see a uniform and think of parades. They don't see the 0-300 wake-ups, the months away, the weight of being responsible for lives. They don't understand that service isn't just a job, it's identity, discipline, sacrifice, woven so tightly you can't separate them. But still, I stayed patient. I kept showing up to every barbecue, every holiday, every gathering where Linda held court and Ethan nodded along. I brought wine, helped set tables, played with my younger cousins, who, bless their hearts, would ask me about flying, even though I worked logistics. I answered them because someone needed to show them that service was honorable, that the uniform meant something beyond what their mother thought. But my patience was wearing thin. Every dismissive comment, every redirect, every joke about attention-seeking piled onto a load I'd been carrying since I was 22. I told myself their opinions couldn't touch what I'd built. But that's the thing about disrespect from family. It finds the gaps in your armor. At my cousin Sarah's college graduation party, Linda introduced me to her friends as, "Oh, that's Rachel, the one who's in the military. Not Major Chester. Not my niece who serves our country. Just the one who's in the military." As if it were a quirk. One friend asked what I did, and before I could answer, Linda laughed and said, "Oh, she just moves boxes around." The table chuckled. I didn't. Colonel Raymond's eyes flicked to me across the patio, something unreadable in his expression. Then he looked away. I stayed another hour, then drove home, sitting in the silence of my apartment, wondering why I kept subjecting myself to people who refused to see me. The answer, I knew, was the same reason I stayed in the Air Force. Walking away felt like surrender. And I'd been trained never to surrender. But the question was getting louder. What exactly was I fighting for? If respect couldn't be earned through service, sacrifice, and competence, then what currency did my family deal in? I didn't have an answer yet. But I knew something had to change. And it did. That change came at a summer barbecue. A day that should have been about burgers and laughter. Instead, it became the day I stopped asking for permission to exist. It was my mother's 60th birthday, held at Linda's sprawling backyard, manicured lawn, an outdoor kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine. I'd driven 3 hours from base, bringing a gift and a fruit salad I'd assembled at 0530 that morning before PT. The weather was perfect. Clear skies, low humidity, the kind of day that made you forget that just 2 months prior, I'd been in a desert where the temperature hit 120 degrees by 10 a.m. I wore civilian clothes, but for the first time in years, I chose short sleeves. A simple blue cotton shirt, jeans, sneakers. Nothing dramatic. But the scar was visible. That thick, ropey line of tissue running from my wrist to my elbow, slightly darker, textured in a way that caught the light differently. I'd made the decision that morning. I was tired of hiding, tired of accommodating other people's comfort at the expense of my own truth. This scar was my story, part of my service. If they couldn't handle it, that was their problem. The party was in full swing when I arrived. Linda was holding court near the grill, directing her husband and Colonel Raymond on proper burger flipping technique. Ethan was there with his girlfriend. Maybe 40 people scattered across the yard. I hugged my mom, grabbed a beer. For the first hour, everything was fine. I talked with Sarah about her new job, helped my younger cousin with his college essay. No one mentioned the scar. Then we sat down to eat. Long tables under a pergola, plates piled high, conversation flowing. I was sitting between Sarah and Ethan, across from Linda and Colonel Raymond. Ethan noticed it first. He was reaching for the potato salad when his eyes caught my forearm, and his expression shifted, something between surprise and discomfort. "Why don't you cover that scar?" he said, loud enough that the conversation around us dimmed. "No one wants to see that while eating." The table went quiet. Not completely silent, but that specific kind of hush where everyone's suddenly listening, pretending not to. Heat rushed to my face, but I kept my voice level. "It's just a scar, Ethan." Linda snorted, setting down her fork with a deliberate clink. She loves the attention. Always has. A few people let out uncomfortable, tension-relieving laughs. My jaw tightened. I wanted to respond. I wanted to explain. I wanted to tell them exactly what this scar represented. But I'd learned in the military that sometimes silence carries more weight than words. So I said nothing. I just looked down at my plate, cutting my burger into smaller pieces. I had no intention of eating. Then I heard a sharp intake of breath. Colonel Raymond's fork had stopped halfway to his mouth. He was staring at my arm. His expression transformed. From polite dinner guest to something else entirely. Recognition. Maybe shock. Something profound. The silence stretched. Then he spoke, his voice cutting through the ambient noise with the authority of 30 years in command. "Operation Iron. Storm, ma'am. The entire table went dead silent. I looked up, meeting his eyes. They were no longer the distant, measuring eyes of a man at a family barbecue. They were the eyes of a soldier recognizing another soldier's sacrifice. Yes, sir, I said quietly. Everyone watched as this retired Army colonel, this man who rarely spoke more than 10 words at family gatherings, pushed back his chair and stood at attention.
Then he saluted me.
A slow, deliberate, textbook-perfect salute. My heart hammered in my chest. I stood automatically, returning the salute with the same precision. Linda's smirk?
Gone.
Her mouth slightly open, her eyes darting between her husband and me, trying to understand. You were there. Colonel Raymond's voice was barely above a whisper. But in that absolute silence, everyone heard it. Yes, sir. The convoy extraction. 3rd week of October. Yes, sir. He lowered his salute, and I lowered mine. Then, he did something I didn't expect. His eyes welled up. Not tears, exactly, but a shine that spoke of memories too heavy to carry alone. Then you've earned that scar 10 times over, he said, his voice rough. And anyone who can't see that doesn't understand the first damn thing about service. No one spoke. Linda looked like she'd been slapped. My brother stared at his plate. The other guests exchanged confused glances, unsure whether to resume eating or wait for an explanation. Colonel Raymond sat down slowly, his hands shaking slightly. He reached for his water glass, took a long drink, then looked at his wife. Linda, he said quietly. This woman pulled 2 injured airmen from a burning vehicle under enemy fire. The after-action report is still classified, but I read the commendation brief. She kept her team alive when most people would have frozen or run. Linda's face had gone pale. I didn't know. You didn't ask, I said. My voice was steady now. You never asked. The barbecue continued, but the energy had irrevocably shifted. People ate quietly. Conversations restarted in subdued tones. I finished my meal in silence, my appetite gone, but my posture straight. When I left an hour later, Colonel Raymond walked me to my car. I should have spoken up sooner, he said. The way she talks to you, I should have said something years ago. It's not your fight, sir. The hell it is, he said, his command voice emerging briefly. Then softer. Your family, and you've served with distinction. That deserves respect, not mockery. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He extended his hand, and I shook it. A firm grip that lasted several seconds. Proud to know you, Major Chester. Thank you, sir. I drove home with the windows down, letting the wind clear my head. Something had broken at that table. I wasn't sure if it could be repaired. But for the first time in years, I felt like I'd been seen. Really seen. And that changed everything. After that day, things shifted in ways I couldn't have predicted. The most immediate change was silence. Aunt Linda stopped calling. The family group chat, usually buzzing, went quiet whenever I contributed. My brother sent a text 3 days later. Sorry if things got weird. You know, Linda, she doesn't think before she speaks. I read it twice, then put my phone down. That wasn't an apology. It was an excuse, a deflection wrapped in false sympathy. It assumed I'd accept the same pattern, disrespect, followed by a half-hearted acknowledgement, followed by me pretending everything was fine. I was done pretending. At work, I threw myself into a new assignment. We were coordinating a massive logistics overhaul for airlift operations. 12-hour days minimum, weekend calls with overseas bases. The kind of work that demanded absolute focus. It was easier than dealing with family dynamics. At least at work, the metrics were clear. Cargo reached its destination or it didn't. Mission succeeded or it failed. No ambiguity, no hidden agendas. My close friend and fellow officer, Captain Dana Nguyen, noticed the change. We were reviewing supply manifests one Friday when she finally said, "You've been different since you came back from leave." What happened? I told her. Not everything. Iron Storm was still classified, but enough. The barbecue, the comments, the scar, Colonel Raymond's salute. She listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from curiosity to anger to recognition. My mom's family is like that, she said when I finished. Immigrant mentality. They think any career that doesn't involve a corner office and a six-figure salary is beneath their daughter. They wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer. When I commissioned, my aunt told me I was wasting my potential. How do you deal with it? I asked. I stopped going to family events where I knew I'd have to justify my existence, she said simply. Life's too short to spend it with people who don't respect you. That conversation stuck with me for days. The idea of actively withdrawing from family felt radical, almost transgressive. We were raised to believe family was sacred, that blood ties trumped everything. But what did those ties mean if they only bound me to people who diminished what I valued most? A week after the barbecue, Colonel Raymond called me. Not texted, called. That felt significant. Major Chester, he said when I answered. I wanted to follow up. Do you have a few minutes? Yes, sir. Good. I think we should talk. There's a coffee shop near Maxwell Base. Neutral territory. Tomorrow at 1,000 hours, if your schedule allows. I agreed. The next morning, I found him at a corner table with 2 cups of black coffee. He stood when I approached. We shook hands. I'll get straight to it, he said. I owe you an apology. I've watched my wife disrespect you for years, and I said nothing. That was wrong. I wasn't expecting that. You're not responsible for. Yes, I am, he interrupted gently. When you wear the uniform, you stand for something. When you take it off, those values should remain. I failed to live up to that standard. He took a sip of coffee. I was a field commander during Iron Storm's early planning phase. I wasn't there for the convoy extraction. I'd rotated. But I knew what that mission cost. We lost good people. The ones who survived carried wounds that don't always show up on medical reports. When I saw your scar, I recognized the injury pattern immediately. Shrapnel trauma. Emergency field medicine. I knew what you'd been through, what you'd done. And then to hear my wife mock it, he stopped collecting himself. That's not who I thought I married. Or maybe it is. And I've been making excuses for too long. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, traffic moved, normal lives unaware. She called me last night, he said finally, asked me to explain what happened, why I reacted that way. So I told her everything I could without violating classification. The mission parameters, the casualty rates, what it means to earn a combat-related injury. How did she take it? I asked. Not well, he admitted. She doesn't have a framework for understanding military sacrifice. In her world, success is measured in social capital, appearances, control over the narrative. Your career doesn't fit that framework, so she spent years trying to diminish it. And your brother? He just follows her lead. Colonel Raymond was blunt. Your brother is insecure. He sees your achievements and feels diminished by comparison. It's easier for him to mock your path than to examine why his own feels empty. Harsh, but accurate. Ethan had always been competitive, measuring his worth against external metrics. When they made him feel inadequate, he lashed out. I'm not sure what to do with all this, I admitted. I spent years trying to earn their respect, and I'm starting to realize it was never about earning anything. They were never going to give it. Then stop trying, Colonel Raymond said. Focus on the people who already see your worth. Build your life around them. Everyone else is background noise. He finished his coffee, then pulled out his wallet and placed a challenge coin on the table between us. I recognized it immediately. A coin from his old unit, given only to soldiers who demonstrated exceptional courage. This belonged to a friend who died in combat, he said. I want you to have it. Not because you need validation, but because you've earned recognition from someone who understands what you've sacrificed. I picked up the coin, feeling its weight. Thank you, sir.
One more thing, he added.
Linda asked if we could all sit down together, you, her, me, your brother, and talk through what happened. I told her that decision is entirely yours. No pressure, no expectations. Just know the offer is there if you want it. Part of me wanted to refuse outright, but another part, the part trained to solve problems, wondered if there was value in trying one more time. I need to think about it, I said. Take all the time you need. We stood, shook hands, and he walked me to my car. As I drove back to base, the challenge coin in my pocket, its weight a reminder. Real respect doesn't come from family obligation. It comes from shared values, earned trust, recognition. The question was whether my family could ever understand that, and whether I owed them the chance. I didn't respond to Colonel Raymond's offer for 2 weeks. Work was demanding an operational readiness inspection, which provided clarity. In the military, you always knew where you stood. Performance was measured, feedback direct, respect earned through competence. By the end of the 2nd week, I'd made a decision. I called Colonel Raymond and told him I was willing to meet.
Once.
With clear boundaries. And only if everyone understood this wasn't about me defending my choices. It was about them finally listening. We met at a neutral location, a community center conference room. My aunt, my brother, Colonel Raymond, and me. No other family members, no audience, no performance. Just the 4 of us, and a conversation years overdue. Aunt Linda looked smaller than I remembered. She sat across from me, hands folded, her usual confidence visibly diminished. Ethan fidgeted with his phone. Colonel Raymond sat slightly apart, present, but not directing. I'd prepared remarks, but when I opened my mouth, what came out was simpler. I'm here because Colonel Raymond asked me to come, but I need you both to understand something. I'm not here to justify my career or apologize for my service. If you're expecting that, we can end this meeting right now. Ethan looked up from his phone. Linda met my eyes. I'm here to give you one chance to really hear me, I continued. Not to hear the version of me you've created in your heads, the attention-seeking girl playing soldier, but to hear who I actually am and what my service actually means. Silence. Then Linda spoke, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. Raymond told me about the mission, about what you did. He told you what he could. I corrected. The full details are classified, but yes, I served in Operation Iron Storm. I led airmen into hostile territory. I made decisions that kept people alive, and I carried the physical and mental scars from that service. I didn't know, she said. You didn't ask, I replied, echoing what I'd said at the barbecue. In 10 years of military service, you never once asked about my deployments, my responsibilities, or what I actually do. You made assumptions based on your own framework of what women should be. And you spent a decade mocking me for not fitting that framework. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. We weren't trying to. Yes, you were, I interrupted. Maybe not consciously, but impact matters more than intent. Every joke about attention-seeking, every comment about playing soldier, every time you changed the subject when I talked about my work, that was deliberate dismissal. And it added up. Linda's eyes were wet now. I thought I was helping. I thought if I pushed you, you'd realize you were wasting your potential on a career that didn't fit who you could be. Who did you think I could be? I asked. Someone softer, she admitted. Someone who didn't need to prove herself. Someone who could just be comfortable. I am comfortable, I said. I'm comfortable in my uniform. I'm comfortable leading airmen half my age who trust me with their careers and their lives. I'm comfortable making decisions under pressure that most people couldn't handle. What I'm not comfortable with is sitting at family dinners while you treat my life's work as a phase I'll outgrow. Colonel Raymond spoke. Linda, what Rachel is describing is disrespect. And in the military, disrespect toward a superior officer or any fellow service member is a serious breach. The fact that she tolerated it from family for as long as she did speaks to her patience, not to any weakness in her character. Ethan finally put his phone down. I guess I never thought about it that way. You always seemed so confident, so sure of yourself. I didn't think our opinions mattered to you. Of course they mattered, I said. You're my family. But there's a difference between caring about someone's opinion and letting it define your worth. I stopped letting your opinions define me, but that doesn't mean they didn't hurt. We sat with that for a moment. Normal life, continuing outside our heavy conversation. So, where do we go from here? Linda asked. That depends on you, I said. I'm not going to keep showing up to family events where I have to defend my existence. I'm not going to smile through jokes about my career. I'm not going to pretend that 10 years of disrespect can be erased with one conversation. What do you need from us? Ethan asked. Respect, I said simply. Real respect. Not the kind that disappears when I leave the room. Not the conditional kind that depends on me fitting your expectations. Actual respect for the path I've chosen and the person I've become. Linda nodded slowly. I can try. I don't know if I can change overnight, but I can try. That's all I'm asking, I said. But understand, if the pattern continues, I'm done. I won't keep subjecting myself to people who refuse to see me. We talked for another hour. It wasn't perfect. There were defensive moments, uncomfortable silences, but it was honest. When we finally stood, Linda approached me. Can I hug you? She asked. I considered it, then nodded. The hug was brief, awkward, weighted with all the years, but it was something. As I drove back to base, I felt lighter. Not because everything was resolved, it wasn't, but because I'd finally said what needed saying. I'd drawn boundaries, stated my terms, and put the responsibility for change where it belonged. On them, not me. 2 days later, I received orders for a new assignment. Promoted to lieutenant colonel, transferred to a strategic planning position at the Pentagon. Effective in 3 months. I called my father first. When I told him, his voice cracked. Your mother would be so proud, he said. Then, I'm proud too. Always have been. I called Colonel Raymond next. He congratulated me, then said something I didn't expect. Linda wants to host a promotion ceremony. Small gathering, just family. She wants to do it right this time. I thought about it. Tell her I'll consider it, but it needs to be about the achievement, not about her redemption narrative. Understood, he said. And Rachel, for what it's worth, you're already one of the finest officers I've known. The rank just makes it official. That night, I sat in my apartment, looking at my left arm. The scar caught the lamplight. I thought about all the times I'd hidden it, all the energy I'd spent managing other people's comfort. No more. The scar was mine. The career was mine. The respect I'd earned was mine. And anyone who couldn't see that clearly didn't deserve space in my life. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. And clarity, I'd learned, was its own kind of freedom. 5 years after that barbecue, I was receiving a shadow box from Linda, honoring my career progression. The family dynamics had shifted. My brother, Ethan, at 35, actually enlisted in the army, saying he needed to do something that mattered. He finally understood what I meant about service being identity. Aunt Linda's birthday cards dropped the passive-aggressive jabs. Colonel Raymond remained a trusted mentor. My own career flourished. I was mentoring young women officers, teaching them that respect is earned and boundaries are essential. I'd learned that I didn't need my family to understand me to value myself. That's the real freedom. Then, 2 years after receiving that shadow box from Linda, I was in a high-level Pentagon briefing, maps and data everywhere. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. Your mother's in the hospital, heart attack, stable now, but it was close. My mind went blank. I excused myself, stepped out, called him. She's okay, he said. They caught it early. ICU at Walter Reed, conscious and talking, asking for you. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. I notified my supervisor, grabbed my cover, and drove across the city, emergency flashers on. Walter Reed was familiar territory, but walking through those doors as a family member felt profoundly different. The professional distance collapsed. My father was in the waiting room, looking older, worn with worry. We embraced. He explained she'd been gardening, felt chest pain, called 911. Paramedics within 6 minutes. The cardiologist said that quick response saved her life. Can I see her? I asked. They're limiting visitors. Linda's in there now. Of course. Linda would be. For all her flaws, she shows up when it matters, at least for her sister. When Linda emerged from the ICU, her makeup smudged, her usual composure fractured.
She saw me.
Relief. Recognition that this was bigger than our complicated history. She's asking for you, Linda said quietly. She's weak, but she's herself. Don't tire her out. I nodded and entered. My mother looked small in the bed, monitors, lines. But her eyes were clear. I took her hand. Hi, Mom. Rachel. Her voice thin but steady. You didn't have to rush. You had a heart attack. I'm exactly where I should be. She smiled weakly. Always so dutiful. You get that from your father. We sat in silence, holding hands. The rhythmic beeping of monitors. I'm proud of you, she said suddenly. I don't say it enough, but I am. You built a life on your own terms. That takes courage I never had. Mom, let me finish, she interrupted gently. I've watched you handle Linda's criticism, your brother's dismissiveness, all of it, and you never broke. You bent sometimes, but you never broke. That's strength. My throat tightened. You taught me that. You and Dad. You showed me what it means to serve with integrity. We tried, she said, but you took it further. You made it your own. A nurse entered. My time was almost up. I'll be back tomorrow, I told my mother. And every day until you're discharged. You have work. I have leave time, I said firmly. And you're more important than any briefing. She squeezed my hand, and I left before she could argue. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Mornings at the hospital, afternoons working remotely from the waiting room, evenings coordinating with doctors. My father was by her side. I handled logistics, medications, appointments, preparing the house for recovery. Linda was there constantly, a whirlwind of helpfulness and overwhelming advice. She'd bring food no one asked for, reorganize magazines, offer unsolicited medical opinions. But she also sat with Mom when we needed breaks, advocated fiercely with nurses, coordinated the family calls. She showed up. On the 4th day, Linda and I found ourselves alone in the cafeteria, both exhausted. Thank you for being here, she said, stirring her coffee. I know things have been complicated, but having you here matters to your mother. It matters to me, too. She's family, I said simply. This is where I need to be. Linda nodded, then looked at me. I've been thinking a lot these past few days. About mortality. About what we leave behind. About all the time I wasted criticizing you instead of celebrating you. I didn't respond. This wasn't the place for another reckoning. I'm not looking for absolution, Linda continued. I know I can't undo the years of dismissiveness. But watching you these past few days, the way you've taken charge, the way you balance compassion with confidence, I finally see what Raymond's been telling me all along. You're not playing at being a soldier. You're a soldier. It's as fundamental to who you are as breathing. It's taken you a long time to see that, I said, keeping my voice neutral. It has, she admitted. And I'm sorry it required your mother's heart attack to make me see clearly. That's not fair to you. No, I agreed. It's not. We sat in silence, drinking bad hospital coffee. Two women who'd spent years misunderstanding each other, finally finding common ground in crisis. For what it's worth, Linda said quietly. I'm proud of you too. I know I haven't said it, haven't shown it, but I am. I appreciate that, I said, and I meant it. Even if the words would have meant more a decade ago. My mother was discharged after 10 days. My father was her primary caregiver, but I arranged for a visiting nurse, set up a family schedule. Ethan requested emergency leave and flew in. He'd gained muscle, carried himself with military posture. Thanks for holding down the fort, he said, hugging me. I couldn't get here sooner. We were in the field. No comms. I know how it works, I said. Glad you're here now. We fell into an easy partnership. Ethan cooked, I handled medical coordination. In the evenings, we'd sit on the back porch, swapping stories about close calls and difficult commands. I think about that barbecue sometimes, he said one evening. The one where I made that comment about your scar. I was such an asshole. You were, I agreed. But you've grown. The military will do that. Strip away all the bullshit. Show you what actually matters. I spent 10 years thinking success meant sales numbers and bonuses. Now I realize that was just noise. What matters now? I asked. Purpose, he said immediately. Knowing that what you do has meaning beyond yourself. You figured that out at 22. Took me till 35. Better late than never, I said. He laughed, and we sat in comfortable silence. By the third week, my mother was strong enough to sit in the living room, receiving visitors, complaining about her restrictions. Colonel Raymond visited, bringing flowers and his quiet, steady presence. He and my father talked in the den about old deployments, the specific loneliness of military life. "How are you holding up?" Raymond asked me later, finding me in the kitchen. "I'm fine," I said automatically, then corrected myself. "Actually, I'm tired and worried and grateful she's alive. All of it at once." "That's normal," he said. "Crisis brings everything to the surface. Gratitude, fear, unresolved tensions. How's it been with Linda?" "Surprisingly okay," I admitted. "We had a conversation. Not a complete resolution, but an acknowledgement. She's trying." "She is," he confirmed. This scared her. Made her realize how much time she's wasted on things that don't matter. She's not going to transform overnight, but she's more aware now. "Awareness is a start," I said. He helped me chop vegetables. This is what real support looks like, I thought. Showing up, doing the work, being present, without needing credit. During the 4th week, I received notification I was being considered for a strategic position in Colorado Springs. A significant opportunity, potentially a full colonel promotion in 2 years. The timing felt impossible. How could I consider relocating with my mother recovering, when family suddenly felt so fragile? I discussed it with my father. "You should take it," he said immediately. "I haven't even told you what it is." "Doesn't matter. I know that look. It's the same one you had when you told us you were joining the Air Force. It's an opportunity that matters." "Mom will be fine," he interrupted. "She's recovering well. We have support. And Rachel, your mother would never forgive me if I let you turn down a career opportunity because of her health scare. She didn't raise you to put your life on hold." "It's not putting my life on hold. It's being here when you need me." "We don't need you to put your life on hold," he said. "Not at the cost of your career. You've worked too hard, sacrificed too much. Take the position. We'll visit. Technology exists. We'll manage." Part of me wanted to argue, but another part, shaped by 2 decades of service, knew he was right. My mother was stable. The crisis had passed. Life continues. "I'll think about it," I said. "Don't think too long," he warned. "The best opportunities don't wait for perfect timing." That night on the back porch, under a clear sky, I thought about choices, about duty to family and duty to self. The military taught me mission first, but also taking care of your people. Which people? Which mission? My phone rang. "Dana, calling from Japan. Heard about your mom. How is she?" I filled her in. "And how are you?" she asked, cutting through my deflection. "Confused," I admitted. "Offered a position in Colorado Springs. Major career opportunity, but the timing feels wrong. Is your mom going to die in the next 6 months?" Dana asked bluntly. "No, not if she follows medical advice." "Then the timing is fine," Dana said. "Rachel, you can't put your career on hold every time family needs you. That's a trap women fall into constantly. Always available, always accommodating, always sacrificing. You've spent 20 years building a career. Don't derail it now." "But what if something happens?" "Then you'll handle it," she interrupted. "The same way you've handled every other crisis. You'll get emergency leave. You'll fly home. You'll manage the situation. But you can't live your life around what-ifs." She was right. The guilt wasn't about Mom's actual needs. It was about old patterns, inherited beliefs. "Take the job," Dana said firmly. "Your mom will be proud. Your dad will be proud. And you'll be exactly where you're supposed to be." After we hung up, I sat in the darkness for a long time. Then I went inside, opened my laptop, and wrote an email accepting the Colorado Springs position. My hands shook slightly as I hit send, but the decision felt right. The next morning, I told my parents at breakfast. My mother's face lit up. "Colorado Springs. That's a wonderful assignment, honey. Leave in 3 months, I said. "Plenty of time to make sure you're stable." "I'm stable now," she said firmly. "Don't you dare use me as an excuse to delay your career." My father grinned. Told you she'd say that. They were genuinely happy for me. And, in their happiness, I felt something release. A burden I didn't realize I was carrying. The weight of believing I had to choose between career and family. I don't. I can have both. Just not in the way Linda's generation defined having both. Before I returned to Washington, we had a small family dinner. My parents, Linda, Colonel Raymond, Ethan, and his wife. My mother, tired but present, at the head of the table. Midway through the meal, she raised her water glass. "I want to make a toast," she said. "To Rachel, who's been our rock these past weeks. Who's built a career we're all proud of, and who's about to start a new chapter in Colorado. We're grateful for you, sweetheart, more than we probably say." Everyone raised their glasses. Linda's eyes were wet, and she nodded at me across the table, an acknowledgement that carried years of unspoken apologies. "To Rachel," they said in unison. I raised my own glass, looking around the table at these complicated, imperfect people. "To family," I said, in all its complexity. We drank, and the conversation resumed. Life continued, in its imperfect, beautiful way. 3 months from now, I'll leave for Colorado Springs. I'll take the next step in a career built with intention and integrity. I'll carry with me the lessons learned from navigating respect and disrespect, drawing boundaries, and learning to value myself independently of anyone else's validation. But tonight, I'm here. Present, grateful, and finally fully at peace with all of it. That day didn't rewrite the past, but it set my terms for the future. I don't hide the scar, and I don't negotiate my worth. Every mark you earn in service, physical or otherwise, is a record of courage, competence, and commitment. Never let anyone shame you for surviving. Never let anyone diminish what you've sacrificed. And never, ever apologize for being exactly who you are. So, I'm curious. Have you ever had family dismiss your work or your wounds? And how did you respond? What boundary did you set that finally changed the tone at home? Who surprised you by standing up for you when it mattered? If you were at that barbecue, what would you have said to my aunt or to me? Do you have a scar story, visible or not, that you're ready to own today?